Teany, Hidalgo with your Sanese Wellness Purpose with Passion series, encouraging you to discover your passions because they will lead you to your purpose. And right now I am waiting for my special guest who will be joining me in a minute, any minute now. Today is sort of like, history part 2. We're going to be talking about why I was ashamed, angry, and then relieved. And it's all about, how I was able to own my personal purpose, right? So we're going to talk about that today. And I want you guys to share as well, because I know that everybody has a story. Hey, Storm, how are you? Good to see you. Everybody has a purpose. Everybody has their own journey. And I want you guys hopefully to be inspired a bit and maybe even can relate to some of the history that we've experienced. Hey, Cece. So that you guys can see, oh, there's my guest. So that you guys can understand some of the things that, even coaches, even people who've been doing this for some time, we have to go through things too. Hi, Jose. Welcome to the show. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. You got everything organized? I know, it's been a while.
So far.
So thank you so much for joining me. I was telling everybody this is about, this is the Purpose with Passion series. And today we're going to talk a little bit about our history growing up. And oh my gosh, so last time you heard me talk about how I grew up and I was born in DR, I came here, and a little bit about my history. But today I want to get a little bit deeper into our parents, right? And how we grew up in the Bronx, and you grew up in a little bit in Brooklyn as well. So how, our parents taught us to live, some of the values that they tried to instill in us that, maybe some of them stuck, maybe some of them didn't. But here we are, we're better for it no matter what happened, right? So let's get started. Today, thank you guys so much. This is the Purpose with Passion series. I am Teany Hidalgo, your host, and we have Jose Mateo, who is my special guest today. I hope you guys enjoy it. Again, today we're talking about how I was ashamed, angry, and relieved, and how we're going to be owning our purpose today and how I owned my purpose. So you and I spoke about our upbringing, and it was kind of crazy how closely our histories matched. It was a little bit crazy, right? And I know that you were born here, but I actually was born in DR. I came when I was 2 years old, but our histories, even though you're from PR and I'm from DR, are really, really similar. So, yeah. Hey guys, say hi if you're on. Say hi, everybody. I have a special guest today, Jose. And so when we came here, what I thought was super interesting was that your dad and my dad had really similar ways of working in terms of multi-talented, jack of all trades, the whole bit. So tell me a little bit about how you were when you were growing up and what you experienced in Brooklyn. How long were you in Brooklyn, actually? Were you more in Brooklyn than in Bronx, or what's
Yeah, born in Brooklyn. I don't know how long I was there for. If I could take a guess, maybe until I was 3. I was so young. But I still have some little flash memories of Brooklyn, and I was such a baby, but it was. I mean, you're a little kid, so you're just processing everything.
Was it still Brooklyn back then?
I think Brooklyn has changed a lot.
I think it has. I love Brooklyn now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed when I pass by Brooklyn. I'm like, this is the Brooklyn that I was born in. It looks pretty hip and nice now.
It's hipster now. It's hipster.
Yeah. So I was there for a while. I always had a love for Brooklyn because my father, he worked at an amusement park in Coney Island. That was one of his jobs. And
awesome.
So to me, Brooklyn had some good anchors there.
That sounds like a paradise as a child.
Huh?
That sounds like a paradise as a child. My dad, he kind of works for Coney Island,
Right, Coney Island. I was lucky there. And that was his thing. His thing was more labor intensive. But yeah, then the rest was in the Bronx, different parts of the Bronx. At one point, it was at Yankee Stadium, close to Yankee Stadium, so I used to hear the game every time.
Yankee.
Yeah, But the Bronx is definitely where I grew up. I went to college in Queens, in LaGuardia, and that was a life-changing experience. But high school in the Bronx, junior high school in the Bronx, and yeah, I grew up with a lot of the influences of the Bronx.
Awesome.
Not necessarily good
Absolutely.
parts of the Bronx, but yeah.
I totally agree. And actually, we were talking about how he'd seen my past video, and a lot of your experiences growing up in, the apartments was the same,
Yeah.
seeing cockroaches and rats and
Unfortunately, a lot of New York is like that. It's
yeah.
kind of crazy.
Yeah, unfortunately some of it is still like that, but we
It's
won't get
still
into
like
that.
that, and that's yeah.
So tell me about your parents, because I know like my parents, like I was saying, my dad was basically like a jack of all trades, and my mom, they both really had to work. So I wasn't exactly a latchkey kid, although my parents weren't around as much as they could have been. I definitely had like, you know how it is. When you're Latino, you're kind of surrounded in a community of Latinos. So I had my neighbors who take care of me, my tias and tios, if they were around, they would take care of me too, things like that. But basically my parents were working all the time. And my mom worked in factories making like glasses and cortinas, curtains. And my dad also was like doing 10 million jobs. He was a taxi driver. He was a candy truck driver. What
I
else did
like
he
the
do? He
candy
was a
truck driver
chef.
thing.
Oh, trust me, that wasn't a good thing for a
Yeah.
child. He would bring home lots of candy.
Woo, that's like Halloween every
Not a
day.
good thing. Um, and then like he also at the end ended up being a cleaning man for like corporate offices, and that's when it pretty much ended for him because he got really sick right after that. But I know that your experience has been similar with your parents having lots of jobs, right?
Well, my father
Mm-hmm.
primarily. My mom was a stay-home mom all the time, which I actually I didn't know how I felt about that initially. But as I grew up and I became an adult, I started to think, wow, I'm glad that she was a stay-home mom. That was so she really took care of us. My dad was always working. He obviously that comes with stress, right? So when he got home, he wanted a lot of the peace and calm and didn't want to hear noise and stuff like that. But he worked. He mostly worked. He was an adventurist, so he liked jobs that are around people and and it's funny because as I got older, I wasn't really too close to my dad because I felt that he was a little too much on the like I was more like a smarty kind of guy. I just I wanted to do more of that. He didn't quite understand
Admit
that.
it, you were a nerd. Admit it.
Yeah.
I signed up for that list too. It's okay. It's okay. We were all there.
I mean, but what's the ironic thing is that as I got older, after my 30s, I actually started appreciating labor-intensive stuff. Not so much working, but on my own projects. Like I started doing things like automotive mechanics and things around the house, and I started actually appreciating that. So there's a part, I don't know if that's a guy thing, but I started appreciating that later, not earlier in my life. So I was like, I'm not gonna be like my dad, you know.
But I still need to fix my car, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's actually it's nice. It's rewarding. And so
Yeah.
it's
I
funny. You
mean,
start to appreciate these things later.
you do. And so it's great. I'm sure that it was amazing to have your mom at home. Like I said, my mom wasn't really that at home, but she was still on top of us, like any good Dominican mom would be. So I can't say that she wasn't around. She was around a lot more than my dad, because my dad at the end, when he was working in the corporate offices, they worked late nights. It was the night shift. So he'd be working until like 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And this is where, a lot of his health issues came from, because what happens at that time,
Mm.
you eat really unhealthy, you're working really hard, and your whole body system, your chemistry, your sleeping, everything is off, right? So I'm not surprised that he got sick from it, but it's a rough job to have. Let's put it that
I
way.
didn't think about that, but you're right. Yeah, when you work a lot like that, I've been lately posting some stuff about that, but yeah, it affects physically.
Yeah, it does. And Storm Davis says he will fix your car. He will fix the car. Hey everybody, we're telling our stories here. Feel free to ask questions. Hey Priya, feel free to ask questions in Thomasina. Hey guys, hello everybody. Feel free to post and ask questions as we go along. We're just kind of giving you our backgrounds a little bit. Yashira says, hi Jose, I miss you. Hey. All right, so I know that our parents were really hardworking. So I think that's one of the staples of like being Latino, right? Like, so I want to get into what we actually learned, the values that
Yeah,
we ended up picking up,
yes.
good, bad, or indifferent, and how they ultimately affected us as we were growing up. And then I'll get into some of the details of like our stories, personal stories now, and
Yes.
some confessions
Yes.
later, 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 later.
Uh,
Okay, so values. So I know for 100% fact, and I'm gonna shoot one out there. Workaholic was like the theme of the day, like unquestionable. Like my parents were workaholics, and that was pretty much not just my parents. It was like all my aunts and uncles. They did what they had to do to provide for the family because that's what you do. You know what I mean? So I don't know if your parents had that same kind of mentality of like, we have to work, we have to provide, it doesn't matter what it is. They pretty much didn't care if it was their passion or not. They were like, it's a job, it gives me money, I'll do it, you know? Was that your experience too?
now that you're saying that, you're kind of triggering some memories. I think that's probably why my dad didn't understand the smarty thing. Um, because he was more of the labor-intensive, hard worker kind of stuff. So he didn't relate to that. And I was more working it hard up. Wait, hold on. It's kind of hard to hold this phone up here. For me, it was working hard up here,
Yeah.
and I think that's where the conflict came in between me and my dad. It was with that he didn't quite understand that. But again, my dad passed away in 93, and I think that later on I realized what he was going through. But at the time when I was a child, I just felt different. I just couldn't relate.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you.
But yeah,
Things
that
change when
definitely
you're growing up.
hardworking thing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I mean, what do you think? What other values do you think came up as we were growing up in terms of our parents and their ethic, their work ethic, their like values and things like that? Anything else come to mind?
Uh, well, my mom just wanted me to do good. She wanted me to go to school and all that good stuff. My dad, he was mostly working. Um, I was somebody that always studied. That's something that I always did. That nobody had to push me to do that, and I think that could be a good thing, I guess, growing up in the Bronx because there was a lot of bad influences. So,
Yeah.
that kind of gave me a compelling, like a purpose. I think you spoke about, like the purpose, a vision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that really was it. But I wasn't popular around where I was because that just wasn't the thing to do, right?
You can't be a
And
nerd. You have to be part of the cool kids.
well, eventually I found my group. It was mostly in school and teachers that admired what I did. Obviously, right? Teachers are gonna like that you're smart because they're they like to teach.
Yeah,
And and then in
absolutely.
school, I joined positive clubs and stuff like that. But when I grew up in the Bronx, there was uh there was a lot of negative influences um in stuff with drugs and all that stuff. And I saw a lot of that. But I didn't relate to it in a way. It could have been because in school they also taught me about you know
Mm-hmm.
the bad things about drugs and all this stuff. So I think and people told me, oh, stay in school, do this, and they always tell you all these things. But
Yeah,
I can't say it came 100% from my parents. I think it came from a combination of things.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Did your parents ever say that you needed to be a good kid? And I say that in quotes because good is relative. But did they say that to you? Like, oh no, you need to be a good kid and do X, Y, Z, one, two, three. Was that told to you?
I I don't know if you want to call this luck, but they really didn't tell me they told me the whole go to school thing. I think I kind of guided myself. After my father passed away at 93, I think that's when I really started to go on my own path. Because my father, he was very controlling. He wanted me to do things a certain way. And I think that made me, the rebel part of me, come out more. And I think, so it really helped. And I
Yeah.
think as when he passed away, I mean, not that I wanted him to pass away, but that's what happened. When overworking, he got sick, right? And and then I just did my own path. I was lucky. I met some people, and they kind of steered me in the right direction. And I think some of it is luck. I don't know. Some of it my
Okay.
parents, but mostly it was some people that I fortunately met. That's why I give so much power to that, to meeting the right people.
Absolutely. So do you think that your dad though, like his idea of like control was for a reason? Like back to my point, like he wanted you to be a good kid, a good person, or was it just his
And you know
personal
what?
like way, you know?
Yeah. Now that I've been doing coaching for a while, I see that pattern a lot. You see this thing now. It's funny, but yeah, I think a lot of our parents want us to do good because he didn't finish school, neither did my mom. So to them, that was like a big thing, right? They want you to do it. But, you know, uh, again, even if he would have pushed me to do, I still was going to go my own path, which created a lot of conflict between me and him. I wanted to do my
Sure.
thing, and he wanted me to do this thing. And
We'll get to that in a minute.
okay, awesome. So yeah.
Tamesina says no. If I have to come to your school, te mato. Oh, Thomasina, she's Dominican too. She understands. um, so the interesting thing is that I did grow up with like this whole like, oh, you have to be a good girl and you have to like, you have to be a certain way, you have to act a certain way, you can't hang out in the streets. And back then
I remember that.
that's what people did. Like they would hang out in the corner or in front of the building or whatever. And my parents were like, negative, not gonna happen.
That's a good thing.
So
That's a good thing.
it's a good thing, but for a kid, it's like, Mom,
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's like, why can't I go hang out with my friends? My friends could only come to my house, right? So it was good. Like I ended up being a good, in her eyes, child, but it was also a lot of control for me. And so I also rebelled. So we're going to get into that next. So I think a lot of
Um,
the values that we ended up learning were values that they taught us for a reason because maybe of how they grew up, of what they thought things were supposed to be like, how they thought we were supposed to be raised, what they thought was good, what, things like that. And one more thing I just wanted to mention was career because I don't know about you, but my parents had tons of careers, but they still had that kind of like American idealistic vision of like, well, you have to have a good job, right? Because that's another kind of value that I definitely saw. And I didn't just see it in my family, I definitely saw it in other households where it's like doctor, engineer, I grew up like my uncles and aunts were engineers. So I already saw that teachers, like we have that in our family. So it was like, all right, listen, step up, right? Like you have to also bring it in your life, right? Be something in your life. Have a good paying job, right? So did you have that experience too?
oh boy, did I. I had a lot of conflict with, yeah, because I was conflicted. I was going to school and, going to college and, that path you're talking about, right? And, but I strayed a lot in other areas. And, that whole,
We can't see you,
especially when I
Jose.
got into, oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. That whole thing with, um, my identity being attached to a title, uh, I'm much more than any title because I could create myself in any way that I want, but you're going to get a lot of peer pressure. As you grow up, you learn how to deal with that, and you learn how to associate with the right people. But so I chose a lot of my friends because a lot of people will not, my old friends will not relate to me and the new me. So
Yeah.
I felt judged many times, and I had to unfriend a lot of people, or I had to select my friends because of that. And I chose paths that really I don't know if they're gonna lead to really rewarding, high-paying jobs, but I chose something that fulfilled me, that gave me purpose, that gave me make me
You think that
happy
was
for
the
whatever.
rebel side of you? Was that the
No,
rebel side of you
no,
that
no, no.
chose to go with what you wanted
No,
versus
no,
what other
no,
people?
no. This was more the real me, which was not. I mean, no, no. Definitely, I don't feel anything. Maybe when I was younger with my dad, probably. Um, but as I got older, a lot of the things that I chose were not very popular with either my family or my friends, and but it was something I believed in inside, and I said, you know what, this feels right, and that's how I kind of did it, you know.
Awesome. No, that's
So
that's really
I
good.
used to stuck to something like a title that was going to make a lot. I could have done that. I could have done that, but I chose uh, not necessarily to go in that direction.
Yeah, and it's good. It sounds like your parents and your family maybe was supportive of what you chose too.
My mom usually is supportive of whatever I do, so that's why I love her so much. My dad, he died kind of early, so I don't know how supportive he would have been of as I grew up more. But I know a lot of my friends were not supportive of a lot of the things that I did.
Interesting. Well, thank
It
goodness
was
you
that
had your
was
mother,
that
right?
with you a little bit?
So, interestingly, a lot of the things that happen to us when we're growing up, because of the way we idolize our parents, right? And we want to make them proud, right? Like that's, I think, a huge thing for a lot of people if you were close to your parents. I can't speak for the ones that were not, but I think both of us were, right? So, and I talk about this story, but back when I was in college, I went the engineer path. I was really good in math and science. I was a nerd and everything. I was the whole everything my mom would have wanted, right? But when I got to college, and I was in engineering school, I absolutely hated it. Like I hated it. Like I wanted to be an electrical engineer, then I switched over computer engineering, and I just couldn't. I hated it. Like it was not what it was cracked up to be. I thought I was going to be making mechanical devices and building breadboards, and there was so much theory and all this stuff that I just didn't care for. So I knew that it wasn't my passion also because like at the end when I chose computer engineering, I was going to be sitting in front of a computer programming and not interacting with anyone. It was so far from the person that I was that even though I was good at math and science, it didn't matter. Like it was just not my personality, right? So what happened to me actually was that I went through a depression when I was in my second or third year of college. And I even went to a therapist, one session. But after that one session, I knew what I was going to do. Because part of my thinking was, again, like I said, I want to make my parents proud. Like I want them to feel like, they put me through school and they did all this work and they raised me right. And I don't want to disappoint them, right? And I don't know if you guys in the audience, you guys went through similar experiences. I know that a lot of Latinos go through that too. They raise you and they kind of guilt trip you into it too. They're like, but I did all this stuff for you. I bore you out of my body. Not to be dramatic or anything, right? Because we're Latino, we don't do that, right? So, but I really thought that my mom would be angry at me and pissed off at me and like not that she would ever disown me. I knew that wasn't realistic, but in your mind you're like she's gonna disown me if I ever do something that is not right in their eyes, right? So I went through a depression, like mulling over all these ideas. At the end of the day, I decided to leave the engineering school and go to the college and study something a little similar, but more artistic. And it was completely opposite of what I thought. My mom was completely supportive. It's just like, we have all these ideas in our heads about what people are going to say, what are they going to think. And I can tell you 100% that is 95% never happens. Never happens. My mom still loved me. She didn't disown me. She didn't kick me out of the house. She was still proud of me. Like all these things were still true. You guys know what I'm talking about out there? It's crazy what our minds do to play tricks on us, right? So anyway, I went through that and that was just terrible. But even later on, like I ended up working for a corporate company and I thought, man, you know, are the choices that I'm making right for me or am I still doing it for my parents? And I'll get into that in a minute. But is there anything you want to add to that before I go into the next topic as related to that?
Uh,
Or any questions in the audience? You
yeah.
guys can relate to any of this stuff? You guys know what I'm talking about out there? there's so much pressure from our parents. Linda Chang says yes. Yes, Linda. Yes.
Do you have it
All
more
the
from your mom or
guilt.
your dad, the pressure?
My mom. My dad, like I said, he really wasn't around that much.
Okay. Yeah.
My mom was pretty much the one that, fed, clothed, looked at our grades. And my mom was no joke. My mom was amazing, but it was like I got a 95 on a test. Where's the other 5 points? Like it was that kind of thing. Like, mom, but I got a 95. Like what's right? Yeah, no. Thomasina, you agree? Yes, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, we give ourselves guilt trips. Thomasina says, "Yep, it's absolutely true, and it's all up here, right? It's like the worst scenario. You think you're gonna die if you make this decision because you don't want to disappoint the people that you love. But at the end of the day, isn't it worse that you disappoint yourself for not being who you actually are, your authentic self, right? And I think you are a good example of someone who actually ended up doing it early on in life, right, Jose? You
Yeah,
had the support, thank
it's
God.
interesting that our parents wants us to follow a path. I think that has to do with certainty because they probably discovered their own path in their life and they so certain that okay, this works. But
Yes.
but that's based on certainty, and that certainty is not going to give you the greatest life running your life based on certainty. So to them, us choosing a path that they're certain about gives them uncertainty.
Right.
But what's funny is that nobody has the certainty that I have for what I want to choose. In other words, it's my own certainty. I don't know. I
That's right.
believe in it. I believe in it. And it's funny. Not a lot of people could understand your feeling of certainty for something. Your level of faith for it. You're the magic that you could create. I think you spoke about we all come with our own special abilities or special. And to
Special
me, I felt I could do
superpowers.
this.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because a lot of like Latino culture is based on history, right? It's like our ancestors, don't you know that our ancestors did it this way? Right? There's a lot of that
Yeah,
happening. Even though they
yeah,
don't
yeah.
say it like that, but it's like abuela did that and it worked for her, right? Or tia so and so did that and it worked for her. So you guys know like a lot of that historical stuff is cultural because that's how they
Oh yeah.
did things. And honestly, a lot of that stuff is certainty for survival, but we're not in survival mode anymore, right? Like we can let that
Times
stuff
has
go.
changed.
Exactly, but those values are still there in their minds because that's what they know, right? So it's time to change
Yeah.
things up. Go ahead.
It's time. Yeah, and it's funny because once you start succeeding in that area that you only you had that certainty for, they start to see it, but they don't see it in the beginning. It's tremendous uncertainty, and then they go, "Oh, he really is doing well there,"
Not
and
so
and then they
bad.
go, "Yeah, maybe I should have not told him that or something."
Yeah, and Thomasina says, and superstition. Yes, a lot of it is based on like otherworldly things that Latinos believe. It's so true. It's so true. All right, so we've established a lot of the values that we've kind of grown up with, and so I wanted to make a confession because one of the things that have has irked me and I didn't figure it out until recently is something that I've been striving for in my personal life and my personal career, which is, you guys know that I'm a coach. Actually, Jose also studies strategic intervention coaching, so you're a fellow coach as well. And I've been working toward having my own coaching practice without having a corporate gig or a side gig, right, that pays my bills. And so one of the things that I felt super ashamed of was actually that I still had my corporate gig. And why do I still have this corporate gig? Why haven't I been able to fully launch into my coaching career? And I think now that we've kind of laid the groundwork for a lot of the history that we've experienced, right, a lot of the reasons why people fail and why I probably failed to take the next step, which I've already done it, but why it was so hard for me and why I felt ashamed of straddling these two careers is because of my parents, right? And some of the values that I learned, right? Which is, guess what? Certainty, right? There is certainty in having a corporate job while you do your side gig, right? And that doesn't mean it's wrong. It's not wrong, but it depends on your perception and intention and thinking around it, right? If you're thinking that you're ashamed of it and you really want to move on, then that's a not a good feeling, right? It's a negative feeling for you. But if you're thinking, okay, I'm going to use my corporate gig to fund my passion project, that's a whole different perspective. But what my point is that a lot of our history shadows and shades a lot of our personal thinking. So a lot of my shame came because I'm thinking, oh, my parents really want me to keep this corporate gig because they feel like that's the right way to live, right? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, they are almost attach it to your identity,
Yeah.
and like one thing I learned about Tony Robbins is that the strongest force of the human personality is to remain consistent with how you define yourself, how people know you. So when you step into the unknown where nobody knows you for that, like a coach, for example, nobody knows, so
Mm-hmm.
they want to keep you in the old identity. They want to kind of tell you, no, that's not who you are and all this stuff. I think part of it is they don't want to see you change because they're afraid of losing you. You might move in a whole
Oh,
totally
for sure.
new direction. So I think it's a loss of. I think the greatest fear, according to Tony, is that our fear that we're not enough and we won't be loved. I think that fear
Exactly.
when we're changing, people fear that. People fear that she's gonna change and
Absolutely.
we're gonna lose her in some way.
Absolutely. And that kind of, messes with your head, right? When I switched to massage therapy before I became a coach, my mom was like, "You want to start a what? You want to do what?" Like it was like it boggled her mind. Like, what are you talking about? You want to touch other people? You want to do what? Like, right? It was like I can't compute. And then when I explained to her,
I
no,
can't
mom, I'm gonna
compute. That's a good one.
I was like, Mom, I'm gonna turn it into a business. It's gonna be great. And I did it. I totally did it. And I kind of like, cracked through her like perception of what a job was like and what, having a career was like and having a business and all that. Like I cracked through some of that, but I personally held on to a little bit of it, which is what kind of held me back from officially moving into the coaching realm. And that's I now that you recognize, because whenever you focus and put light on something, you can let go of it and you can release it and you can change it, right? So that has changed for me. Did you want to say something?
It's funny. This is not. I've thought about this many, many times. I think, especially me and you, that we value growth, not certainty.
Right.
We're breaking into new ground, and I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing because we're not following everything that our family does. We're breaking into new grounds that maybe opens up possibilities for our families. They thought, oh, maybe I think that's what comes with growth. If we were certainty
Yep.
people, we'll follow everything that everybody, that our parents
Yep.
told us.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that I talk about the most with regard to like, purpose with passion, in other words, like connecting with your purpose, is that the number one value that helps you discover what that is your ability to contribute to something bigger, something other than yourself. That's one of the major, like growth and contribution are like, we know them as spiritual values,
Yeah,
but they
yeah,
are actually the major values that actually help you in discovering your passion, because your purpose is not about you. It's about what you are going to contribute to the greater whole, right? That's what connects you to everything and everyone. That's what allows you to contribute something bigger to the world, right? When you can contribute your personal whatever that is, whatever you want to bring to the world.
I
What do you want
think
to say about that?
you brought up a thought. The contribution thing is a beautiful need because you don't stay focused just on what difference can you make for your family and your history,
Mm-hmm.
but for humanity or for other people or a greater good. And I think that's what makes it so fulfilling. And I think that's why I chose a different path because I wanted to extend out. I know the joy of I wanted to be part of different cultures and be able to experience different people. But that's my thing. I think that's why I chose a different path. I did the same thing you did, which was I went to school for computers, and the first job I got, they wanted to stick me in a room. I remember back then when they used the beepers, right? The beepers. And they stuck me in a
Yep.
room and I was gonna do this fixing computer, I guess, and once in a while we'll go out and whatever. And to me, no lie, the pay was good. I needed to be certified and I quit like maybe the second day because I just could not. I'm like you in terms of I have growth, but I also have uncertainty. And to me, that's just killer to just be in a room fixing. I mean, I love fixing computers, but
You like
yeah, I
variety.
left it. Yeah, I gotta have a lot of that. And see, like right now, for me, this that we're doing is a growth experience, and it's also variety, and it's also contribution because we're sharing this.
Absolutely.
So this aligns with how I am, what we're doing right now.
Absolutely. Amen, brother. Amen.
Amen.
So, I mean, so along those lines, in terms of your purpose, because actually, I like my day job. I also am in front of a computer, ironically, right? Because the reason I didn't want to be an engineer is because what I was ended up going to be doing was programming, and there was no way I was going to be in front of a computer programming, looking at code all day. It was just not. I was like, that's
Even
just
though you're
not my
probably good at
nature,
it, I bet
man.
you.
I am good at it and I still know how to do it. Like, I do front end coding or whatever. But my point is that when I ended up switching careers, I ended up choosing a career that was a dual career because it was creative. I ended up doing visual arts and computer science. So I became what I do now, which is user experience. So I help people develop websites and all that good stuff. But here's the key. Well, the reason I left was because it was going to be so far and me in front of a computer, not interacting with people, right? Which is what you said. So doing what I did in my corporate job and what I do in my corporate job lets me do that. Like, even though I'm in front of a computer and I'm like designing or, creating layouts or whatever, I still have to talk to clients. I lead a team. I have to hire people. I have to train people. I have to do all these different things where I'm absolutely engrossed in being around people and, connecting with people a lot, like all day. Like, I can talk to people all day if I wanted to. So that still is fulfilling for me, right? And so what I wanted to tell people, and I think this is one of the major messages of this whole piece here, today's video, is that no matter where you are, you can bring your passion wherever you go. Because for me, like, part of my passion is connecting with people and contributing to people, right? I can still do that at work. I still do that at work. I'm still inspired. They think I'm crazy at work. I'm one of the positive people they know. And I think my coworker Rocco's on, so he knows. He's always calling me crazy. They're like, I don't know about that Teany, man. She's crazy. But uh-oh, I think we lost Jose. So hopefully we get him back. Jose, come back. Lost him. So I'll keep talking. Hopefully he'll be able to rejoin. Um, so the point is that you are absolutely able to still use your personal gift, your passion, your purpose, whatever that is. You absolutely can still bring it into the office. Bring it to church if you go to church. You can still, do all those things, right? Hey, Jose, I think I see you, but how do I add you? There we go. Add. Okay, so he's going to be joining in a minute. But the point is that whatever that talent is, you can still bring it with you, right? And that's what I learned, that you don't have to give up your corporate gig in order to pursue that thing. You can still do that thing and still work the corporate gig. In fact, I have had clients that I've spoken to where they ask me like, "Oh my God, I just want to quit my job. I just want to do what it is I'm meant to do already," right? Hey Jose, you're back. Can you hear me? Uh-oh, I think you can't hear. Yes, Thomasina. She says she learned the value of vacations. Work to live, do not live to work. Yes. Well, that's important too. And I know, Thomasina, for a fact that you love what you do, and that's definitely part of your purpose and passion, right? Like contributing the way she does, with helping kids and things like that. So I know that you love that and that you're contributing and that you're passionate about it and that you're caring about it, that your whole heart is in it, right? But the point is that you don't have to necessarily leave your corporate job to do it. You can, and actually, back to my story about the client that I mentioned. Can you hear me, Jose?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So the client said, I want to quit my job. I just want to do what I love already. Like, I can't stand this. And I said, don't do it. Don't quit yet. because it's going to be harder for you unless you have a huge nest egg somewhere, like, uh, whatever many grand, right? Unless you have a huge nest egg, you're going to cause yourself more stress trying to pursue this without a real job than if you try to, straddle your job and pursued what you love outside. When I did massage therapy, I was working 9 to 5, sometimes weekends even at the time. And I worked and I went to school at night for massage therapy. And I did a year and a half of that, almost 2 years. So school at night, right? You can do whatever that is. When I coach people, early in the morning before I go to work, lunchtime, after work, late at night. I'm a night bird, so I'm late. I go to sleep like at 12, 1 o'clock. You too, right?
Yeah.
And I wake up early, so that's just how I do it, and you got to do what you got to do until you can do what you want to do, right? You do what you got to do until you do what you want to do, right? What do you think,
Yes,
Jose?
yes, yes. Well, and sometimes we are crazy. Like I'm kind of crazy, and I want to speed up the process, so I take some pretty crazy jumps. But a
Yes.
lot of people don't agree with. Yeah, I'm more the crazy type, and because I embrace uncertainty and I grow so much from it. But I take some crazy leaps. I've been fortunate that a lot of them has been rewarding. I think life rewards you when you make big leaps, but you have to be careful. You have to make sure that you're committed. You really believe. If you're gonna make a big leap like that, make sure you go in with
Yes.
your full heart. Because if you don't, you could get hurt. And I don't mean when I mean hurt, it could be financially hurt, or but and that doesn't mean that can't happen. But you got to go in with full heart if you're gonna make these big leaps. That you got to really
Yeah,
believe
and
in
you
it.
got to use your fear, right? You got to use your fear to serve you instead of like hinder your process, right? Hinder your move. And like Tony
Yeah,
says, and I know you'll appreciate this. I was just reading an article that he wrote. He goes, "Burn the boats." I'm like, "Wait, hold on. Don't burn the boat just yet. Like, hold on a second. Think about this first. Put your heart and soul in it. Make sure that you're prepared, you know? And
oh
then
yeah.
burn the boats, right?"
Yeah, preparation is so key. I stress myself out preparing a lot. I try to prepare, but no matter how much you prepare, there's always that
Something's
critical,
going to come up.
yeah. But
It
yeah, yeah.
is, but go ahead.
I over prepare. It's one of my bad things. I annoy people with how much I prepare. Um, certainty people especially. But but I guess you could call that my defect. I over prepare because because what's gonna happen next is gonna be crazy.
Right,
So
right. Well, and that's important. And Thomasina says discomfort can lead to huge success. Absolutely. What do they say? On the other side of discomfort is success, is basically, right? Like, you have to be a little uncomfortable. It's never going to be perfect anyway. And actually, like, that discomfort, that fear, that's all energy that you can use to like launch the thing, right? Whatever that is. Use it to launch it. Like, honestly, I think a lot of times I feel like fear is just misplaced energy. I think I wrote a post about this. Fear is just
so
misplaced energy, you know?
so I have a question for you, real quick.
Yeah.
And being in the Bronx and being raised there a good portion of your life, what is one thing that you think you got that helped you succeed? I know that sounds kind of crazy, but what was that one thing that probably it seemed negative, but was the one of the things that helped you propel forward?
Oh, that's a really good question. And from my Bronx friends, and Thomasina's one of them. Um, One of the things that they talk a lot about the Bronx is street smarts, right? You know
uh,
what I'm talking about. And I don't mean
yeah.
street smarts like, you grew up in the ghetto and you got to protect yourself. And like, I'm not talking about necessarily that, but that you are able to see people and connect with people and know exactly what they're about. And I think that's one of the things that I learned as a street smart thing. Like, that when you're walking down the street, you're walking with an attitude because you have somewhere to go, right? But then when you run into people, you also know if so and so is trying to get your attention, you probably already have an idea of what they're about, whether they're in the right place for you or in the wrong place for you. So that's one of the things I learned. And I think that really helped me as a coach because I gauge people really well. And I think growing up in the Bronx, that helped a lot, because of all the types of people that you run into.
Yeah, you get to see a lot
How
of the
about you?
darkness, and yeah, you get to see a lot of the this. You get to be hyper aware. I think that like when I moved to PA in Florida, it's such a piece of cake compared to New York, and it's almost like I had to get used to it because in New York you have to be aware of your environment, you know, and because it's not a very safe place. I'm not saying all of New York, just parts of it. Even in the Bronx, the same thing. But I
Mm-hmm.
think what New York helped me was it helped me to know what's important and to help me to it was easy to stand out like in terms of success because a lot of people wasn't a lot of people were pursuing things that they wasn't etc they were making themselves unhappy and so to me it was like I'm gonna do this like this is something I'm gonna go for it wasn't that very hard. It's not like being in a neighborhood where everybody excels and you're competing
Mm-hmm.
with Harvard here and this and this and that. So yeah, it really kind of helped me stand out to some extent because a lot of people were taking the wrong path.
Absolutely. That is so
Yeah.
true.
So
I did see a lot of my friends like have babies early on. And not that, they ended up being fine, most of them, even having babies and all. But, definitely there were a lot of people who were going down a rougher path. Let's put it that way. Because it's not easy having a child so young. But I know I have a lot of Bronx friends here. Thomasina, you wanna post anything about your experience in the Bronx and what you might have learned? It's so funny because they always think that the Bronx is like so violent and all you see is violence and all. And I talked about in my last video how it was a little bit crazy, right? There was a lot of drugs and people were doing stupid things. And actually there were a couple of shootings in my building, but we won't get into that. But I
wait,
never
you used to live in
felt.
the project?
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
someone
yeah. I'm not surprised.
shot. There were a couple of people that were shot in my building. Yeah, yep. It was pretty devastating to hear about these things. But I think that made me more alert, not scared. You know, like, and then like Thomasina just wrote intuition. I felt like I gained a lot of intuitive sense, and that's why I said like I learned to gauge people because when you grow up in an environment where you kind of have to. You can't just be like, oh, la la la, like the world is amazing and nothing's ever gonna happen to me. Like it's just not gonna, it
Yeah,
doesn't work that way.
yeah.
You just have to be like, vigilant. Oh, she's a Washington Heights girl. That's okay. It's basically the same. She's from Washington Heights. I grew up in the Heights too. It's the same. It's the same. What are you talking about? So, so yeah, being hyper vigilant and focused and like, knowing where you want to go, knowing what you do want and what you don't want. Because if you don't know, right, if you waver, right, when you're in any kind of situation as a youth, then it's much easier for people to take advantage of you and for bad things to happen, right?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Because that kind of environment will foster that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Thomasina says, I did not want to end up being like that. I wanted more for myself. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like I said, a lot of the people I hang out with, Thomasina is one of them, yourself, like, you also surround yourself with the right people that can take you, that can kind of foster the environment where it's growth and contribution and like, connection and all those different things. You want to put yourself in those situations as well.
It's funny. I remember I was always looking for role models. I started out with books, but one day I saw Tony Robbins on TV on a late night, and he promised this life, right? Like this fulfillment, success. I was like, oh my God, I want that life, right? So I ordered his tapes, and you already know the path that took me on, right? And I was telling everybody about it. Nobody could comprehend where I was coming from with this Tony Robbins thing. Like it was just like, what are you
You
talking
were
about? This
ahead of
guy's,
your time, Jose.
I don't know. I think it was my drive to seek something out better and believing that there is something better because a lot of people could be very pessimistic and believe that there is nothing better out there. And I think that belief, that trust, I think I do that even with my coaching. I trust that people have good in them. Like I know that it's in there. So it's like finding treasure almost. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
just like I did that, I do it also with my coaching, and I do it in life. I started, who can I surround myself with? Oh, not only that, how can I pull out the best in people? Because I think a lot of people didn't do that with me.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And definitely not in the Bronx, that's for sure.
It was all about being down in the Bronx. It was all about,
Yes, that's
whatever
right.
going on. And sometimes it's just that whatever method they're using is not so great. I was not very popular, you know, um, which is a blessing. I'm talking about in the hood, right? I was not. It was a blessing
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't have a lot in common with them. The only place I felt in my place was, that I felt it was in school or in a place that I could excel because, I like studying, I like learning, right? And then
Yeah.
eventually, and I became popular in high school. I even became popular in college. But that's because I love people. I think it's because I want to find the good in people. And you could get popular just by that alone. And I'm like that
Mm-hmm.
now, even with the Tony Robbins organization. I found my place there because after high school, you don't see those people. After college, you don't see those people. So I was
Yep.
always finding a place that I could always go back to and not lose those connections. And I think in the Tony Robbins organization, that's one of the organizations that I feel I could do that, and not feel weird when I'm expressing something
Absolutely.
about psychology or something about finding good in people. They want to find good in you. You're one of those people. I met you
Yeah,
we met through the coaching thing and the Tony
that's
Robbins.
right.
So yeah, that's how we're connected right
Absolutely. You
now.
have to find your tribe. You absolutely have to find your tribe because like fosters like too, right? So you grow each other in some ways, right? So Thomasina says, my mom worked 16 hours. I wanted to work less, more money so I can enjoy my life. I saw my mom struggle and I wanted a different life. Yeah, so it's not unlike our stories. We saw our parents go through some of their workaholic ways and hardworking ways, and we wanted better, right? I think that's where it starts. But also like where it continues because now we want to not just do that, but also like do something bigger and help people in a different way, in ways that we couldn't do it before. And I think like even being Latino, I think helped me because now like it's like in part of our culture is bringing people with us, right? Like whenever you do something, oh, traite al primo or the cousin or whoever, right? You're always trying to like we're always trying to connect people, right? That's just how we work. So even like when you start learning how to work and all that stuff in the real world, hey Ronnie, um, you want to bring people with you. So you want to uplift them too, right? You want to inspire them too. You want to bring them, if you have a new gig that you need a position for, you probably want to bring one of your friends on board, right? Like it's kind of part of our culture, even that we do that in some ways, right?
I know you Dominican culture and I'm Puerto Rican culture, and I was brought up with a lot of Dominican culture. And so I know a little bit about Dominican culture. I know that in Dominican culture, a lot of it is very family driven. It's very you share and you guys do things together, and that's one of the things I love about the Dominican culture and the food. and I think, I mean, I'm Puerto Rican, but I can't say I know the Puerto Rican culture, even though I'm Puerto Rican, just because of all the different types of people I associate myself with. But I think in Puerto Rican, people tend to be more like you do your thing. There is some unity there, but for me, it's always been like, okay, each person pursue their path. Um, so I know for you, when you was
Yeah.
talking about your mom and your family and stuff like that, when you did something different, right? It must have been kind of interesting because everything is family, right? Like real big families.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's a big deal when there's like when there's a stray,
This is true. Yeah.
when someone strays away from the path, it's a big deal. But it ends up being a good deal because then we end up making the whole better. You know what I mean?
Wow. Wow.
So
Wow.
I think for me, that's been a blessing to be able to come back. And like a lot of my family look to me and my sister actually as like, and not to toot my own horn, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because I like doing it. Inspiring people, like my sister and I have always been really wanting to connect with all of our cousins and bring them up and inspire them and help them continue being in school and finding what they love. So we've always done that since we were young because we were one of the older ones. So we were able to do that, thank God. So they look to us and they're like, oh man, yeah, that, let's be like them. Let's do that. And that's such a beautiful thing when you have that kind of connection with people that they see you and it's not just It's not I'm better than you. It's let me bring you with me, you know?
And how does your mom feel about you right now with everything that you're doing, this, the coaching and all that stuff? How does she feel about that?
She doesn't quite understand it all, but she knows that it's for the good.
Yeah.
Right?
It's for the good,
She
right?
understood the massage stuff, but every time I come back from a UPW, I'm like wired. I'm like, Mom, we're gonna fix so and so and so and so. I'm just kidding. I don't say that. I'm like,
No, but
no,
we do that
Mom,
in the
but let's
beginning,
like,
right?
let's talk about it, Mom. Let's fix this. We can fix this. I know how to fix this, Mom. That's a lot of what happens when you come from these conferences.
That's a
So it's good.
negative
Like,
pattern,
yes.
right? Right?
I know what's your value and belief system, right? Like, but
Yeah,
no,
let's
but
find
it's
out the
good because
order and
now she
hierarchy.
sees it, and yeah, she sees it now, and she's like my daughter's doing something good. Like and I keep telling her like, Mom, I'm going with my gut. I'm going with what I love. I'm trying to help people. That's what I do. I help people. That's what I do. You know? Do your parents see? I mean, does your mom see it that way too?
Um, I think like any mom, I think she wanted just to make sure that I knew what I was doing, if that's what I wanted to pursue. Um, I think they just accepted that I go in these different paths. I don't think they even question it as much anymore. She just want to know, am I happy doing that? And she don't try to stop me. It was more my dad, I think, that it was more resistance. But I think my mom just as long as I'm happy and I'm okay, and she's fine with it. So
Good
I like
answer,
that
Mom.
part
Good
of her.
answer. It's
So
true.
yeah.
Thomasina says, but we need to evolve, not stay stagnant. Absolutely. We do need to evolve. So, like I said, purpose, pursue what that is, and evolution is absolutely something that we need to do as people, right? Not just when you discover what you're oops, not just when you discover what you're meant to do with your life, but also like going forward with your life, evolving yourself. She said, who we are at 20 is not the same as 40. Absolutely. So, and even after 40, after 50, after 60, like the evolution continues, your lifestyle changes, like everything changes. So, anyway, my
Yeah,
point is, and go ahead. What?
no, no, I was gonna say that that's interesting because Tony says, I got this from Tony, that he says we overestimate what we could do in a year, but we underestimate what we could do in 20 years. We don't realize how far we could go in 2 decades or a decade,
Right.
or even 5
That's
decades.
true. Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? We do evolve. And she said passions evolve. Absolutely. Passions do evolve as well. And so what we want to do then is, because that's the whole purpose of this video series, to really encourage you guys to just pursue whatever that is and be true to yourself. Because like, even though, like we said, we've had all these experiences as we've been growing up in our culture and in the Bronx and all that, they have influenced us, but they haven't necessarily made us, right? Like we chose what influenced us or not, you know? And so allow that to help you and, to guide you. And then you can figure out what it is that you're meant to do, right? And continue to pursue that. And don't be ashamed. Don't be, fearful of what people are going to say, because at the end of the day, they're not the ones who are going to be paying your bills. They're not the ones who are going to be, sleeping with you at night. They're not going to be, they're not going to be that person. So you are in charge of you. You are in charge of your life. So, and then honor the transition. Because for me, like, it was so hard to make that transition of like, I still have a corporate job and I still have my corporate job, but I'm bringing my passion into it. Hey, Mike. And transitioning out of it, which a lot of my friends and my coworkers know. So the transition, honor that transition, whatever that is, because part of that transition is just you being your authentic self, you being who you are, right? The best of you, right, Jose?
Yes, and it's that's why we wanted to be coaches, because it's so challenging to make these transitions. And in the beginning, anybody could be excited about something, but can you sustain your purpose is very challenging. So I think one of the things we want to do as coaches is not only pursue our passion, but help other people go in that direction, because it's so rewarding. We want to
Yeah.
light people up. I think we're artists. We are artists. Me and you are artists, meaning we like to light people up. And I was never good with being a manager, or even being an entrepreneur just strictly business. I was always like wanted to light people up. I think that's why I did everything I've done, everything from coaching to my computer services. It's to light people up, and that's what I'm for. And not always it pays initially, but eventually that's my purpose. My purpose, it's my fulfillment, and that's rewarding, very rewarding.
Yeah, because your
And I
light
think it makes a difference.
shines other people's light. Yeah. What?
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Anybody have any questions before we run out of here? Thank you guys so much for hearing us rant on about what we love the most.
And the Bronx.
um, and the Bronx, and the Bronx. San Messina says, also ask for help, reach out, speak to the universe, foster positivity, speak to God to make it happen. Absolutely. Use all you got. Use all your tools. You know, use it all. Make it happen.
Yeah, yeah. I want to add to that. I want to add to that that what she said about, spirituality and use God. That's so key in my life right now. Listening to the inner guidance. I remember in the beginning when I was learning from others, let's say Tony Robbins, it was just like, all right, Tony's the genius and Tony's the one that, whoever. Now I listen to a lot of my own wisdom. So and trust life and stuff like that. So yeah, I agree with what she said. That's great.
Absolutely. Like I said, whatever helps you be guided, to your path, whatever that path is. Absolutely. So thank you guys so much. Hey guys, for those of you who are just joining us, you're going to have to catch the replay. We're at the end of this. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Jose, for joining me. It was kind of a last minute surprise,
Yeah,
but it
I
worked
was
out so
excited.
well.
I was actually going to Aldi and Walmart and all these. I was doing my own little shopping thing, and I was like, "Holy crap! I have 20 minutes to think about this, or 30 minutes." And then I was like, "Yeah, it took me a while. It took me a while, but then I was like, okay, you know what? Let's do it. Let's do it." And yes,
I
there you
like
go.
putting people on the spot.
And you like help people grow, which I
Those are the
like.
best. And watching people
Yes, yeah,
grow, obviously, and contributing to that growth, obviously. So,
contributing. Yeah,
so thank you
yeah.
for joining me and helping me do that with the people who are watching today. So, really appreciate that you were able to just go with it. But you're from the Bronx, so you can do that. You know how to do that.
Woo!
All right. So thank you guys so much. This is Jose, and I am Teany Hidalgo, and this is the Sanese Wellness Academy with your Purpose with Passion video series, encouraging you to discover your passions because they will lead you to your purpose. I love the way that rolls off your tongue, doesn't it?
Yes.
Anyway, thank you guys. I'll see you guys on Thursday for another interview, another special guest. I'll see you then. See you on the Passionful side. Bye.
Well.